Before benefit concerts became an industry of their own, before Live Aid and Farm Aid and Live 8, there were Amnesty International shows, The Secret Policeman's Ball. They started out in the mid-'70s as mainly comedy shows. That's in England. They started including some of the biggest musical acts, and one of the men behind the concerts is an old friend of ours. Let's look at a clip here, and we'll meet Martin.
I wanted to ask about the title for the Amnesty Gala. It's called The Secret Policeman's Ball. Is it your title?
No, I'm glad you asked me that. No, it's Martin Lewis's title. I can pin that one on him, but I thought it was quite funny.
My friend Martin Lewis had invited me in to, in a sense, to kind of lighten the proceedings, to break up the comedy.
I was aware of The Secret Policeman's Ball. Pete Townsend, fantastic show. Then I got a call from Martin Lewis, who had organised the first one. Would I come on? And so, because I was a fan of the first show, I said, sure.
On Tuesday, the best moments from all the human rights concerts coming out in a 6-DVD set called Released. And the man who was being talked about, Martin Lewis, let me explain. They got calls from Martin Lewis. Everybody in the world gets calls from Martin Lewis. How are you, Martin? How
Good to see you again, Steve.
No, you make it happen. You really do make things happen.
Well, I do my best. And what's interesting, I mean, you realise that those shows back in the 70s, I was actually a child producer. I was only 3 years old.
Yeah, I know that, because I was 2 watching them.
That's right, when we did those.
I get confused about The Secret Policeman's Ball, because I get it confused with Monty Python at the Hollywood Bowl, because you were involved in all of this. So for the folks watching, clarify it.
The Secret Policeman's Ball show started in the mid-70s for Amnesty International, the human rights organisation.
In England.
In England. And it was John Cleese's idea. He wanted to raise money for Amnesty, and at that time Amnesty was not that widely known. And by pulling together his friends, who of course were Peter Cook and Dudley Moore and all the folks in British comedy, Rowan Atkinson,
the young Rowan
Atkinson, that led to these shows that raised the profile of Amnesty. And as a producer, my idea was to bring in some rock music to sort of broaden the base, and I got Pete Townsend and Sting and Bob Geldof and folks like that. But the wonderful thing about Amnesty is that it inspires people to pass. JFK talked about passing the torch to the next generation.
I know where you're going here. Bono,
yes,
1986, saw it, right?
That's right.
And that inspired him to almost become the Bono we know.
He decided that it was important that Amnesty have the support of U2. And then there was a wonderful chap at Amnesty's American section, a chap called Jack Healy, and he took the idea and he built on the idea of what we'd been doing, and he gathered all these musicians together and put them on tour. First there was a tour of the United States with U2 and the Police and Bryan Adams and Peter Gabriel and Joe Baez, and then Jack Healy and I brainstormed and thought maybe we could do something else, and we came up with the idea of a world tour, and Bruce Springsteen and Sting and Peter Gabriel.
Do people say no?
I've never encountered in all these years an artist has said no to Amnesty. Let's face it, human rights is the most fundamental thing there is. There are on this planet, there's 7 billion of us. You remember human beings, we were very big in the 60s.
I remember them, they were a fad.
And the whole thing is, there's this document called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This year is the 65th anniversary of it. And if you like, it's the Magna Carta for all of us humans. And spreading the message of that is what Amnesty does. Campaigning for political prisoners, people who are in prison for their beliefs, not for using or advocating violence. And by gathering together these musicians, it's a very important way to reach people.
You know, the interesting thing about musicians, back when you started in England, when you were a kid, musicians weren't expected to be rich. Guys with guitars weren't expected to be rich, and the world has changed. Some of the highest paid people in the world, we're looking at them right now, are musicians. They make millions, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And the great thing about this is they understand their power. They understand their power to raise money for other causes. We just had Harvey Weinstein in here for what they did in New York after Sandy. Musicians really do step forward.
You know, well, sometimes there are people who are cynical and say, oh, these are limousine liberals, and it's...
Well, yeah, to some extent they are, but you take advantage of them.
But listen, when Bruce Springsteen, Sting and Peter Gabriel and others went around the world, they did that for 6 weeks. That was like Live Aid on the road for a month and a half. And what's happened is that continues to inspire younger musicians, folks such as Radiohead and Green Day and Coldplay and Mumford and Sons.
Mumford, yeah.
So
sure.
all these people, and the idea came up to put, none of these concerts had been released on DVD, and I thought, well, you know, Amnesty should do that as a way to reach out. And it's funny, we're in an ADD society, people watch a 30-second blip on their electric toothbrush, and I've come up with a 17-hour, 6-disc DVD, but it's brilliant music by these musicians, and it's for such a great cause.
You got one other thing going on you should mention here. It's going to be at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica. What's that?
Well, we're going to have a world premiere of highlights, because you can't show 17 hours on a big screen.
Right.
So we've got a 90-minute film, and one of the big things of the 1986 tour for Amnesty was the police reunited. And we've got 2 members of the police, Andy Summers and Stuart Copeland, are going to come to the Aero Theatre this Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock for the world premiere to celebrate this.
All right. Also, you got to know about Martin, because he's a passionate idealist, obviously. He's also like a funny guy. You aren't that funny this time, but next time.
I'll promise I'll try and be closer.
Okay. And do people accept by now, Martin Lewis? They accept the name. They don't ask if you're named after Martin and Lewis.
My middle initial is N, so I always tell people that this is Martin and Lewis,
okay,
now in one body.
All right, coming up, my new best friend, Morecambe Weiss, coming up. In just a minute, Joe Mantegna is going to be with us.